A core promise of the Dustups channel is learning on camera. I have done so many dumb things, and yes, they really are unintentional, on camera documenting my journey towards building a desert forest. I couldn't put my truck in 4-low just 2.5 years ago. I tried planting agave by basically throwing seeds everywhere. And a few weeks ago, I shared myself accidentally planting rabbit droppings because they look so much like jujube seeds. But you can dwell on the failures living in the muck, or you can enjoy the process knowing that you're getting better every day. Trees are growing at Dustups, and one day soon, they aren't going to require a drop of irrigation. I'm building a system that will survive me for generations. The challenge has been and continues to be getting seeds to germinate in the first place. The best success we've had is buried tires. We had modest germinations, but added way too much hydrogel. Seeds would get started, that was one problem solved, but then they would just die weeks later from fungal infections. Desert trees do not like wet feet. And the other problem was we used ECB for the shade, and that was too effective. When I would investigate the growth, I would frequently see the trees looking leggy from not getting enough light. Shade is good, but we really overdid it. Tires are a method that we might go back to. I really want to exhaust the easier methods before we put all of the work that's required to use tires to get trees started. First, you've got to haul them out to the ranch, and then you got to go to the effort of burying all of them. It's very time intensive. That and the Dustups ranch is almost always at an elevated level of wildfire danger. The last thing I want to have on hand is a mountain of tires that can burn for years on end. What you're looking at is an environmental horror story out of Kuwait where a tire fire raged for years on end. Now, I'm never going to have that many tires on my ranch. It's an extreme example, but I don't want to deal with it even on a small scale. It sounds so obvious in retrospect, but mulch has been one of my bigger lessons this year. We added a fair amount of mulch on the first terrace, and on the second terrace, I really went to town, adding 8 to 12 inches of mulch in many spots. The moisture sticks around and it supports transplanted trees, but that alone wasn't enough to get seeds started right where I want them. What had happened was we covered them and they can't grow through hay, even though I broke it up nice and fine. They still need light. So what we've made are these little nests. They look pretty cool here, and they look amazing from the air. When Brandon replanted, he tried to save whatever was growing, so we obviously didn't want to kill things to try to plant and grow things, but what he's done is he's marked a couple of spots with flags where there's trees growing, and if you look really, really close, right here, that's a Palo Verde. So Brandon right now, he's just thickening the hay, making sure that these little nests are really, really tall, just like a tire. So if you can see into that hole, it doesn't look as good on screen, but like we want this nice and high. That way it's a windbreak, it's a shade wall, but these are some of the flags that I know I set. And you can see that Palo Verde right there, growing up nice and tall. It's a little too tall. It shouldn't be that leggy. So that's sweet acacia. That one is pretty well established. That's not new. But right down there, those fat leaves, Palo Verde, and then another Palo Verde. It's funny because to me it almost looks like a pumpkin. What I'm encouraged by is that the learning curve is going so much faster. That we did the tires, we did the greenhouse at the ECB, we did this emergency planting with the hay, sheet mulching everything, realized we messed up. Now we're trying to basically simulate the tire experiment, but with hay. And there are seeds coming up, which tells us that the moisture control is now working. I have a moisture meter, and Brandon is now maintaining a log of not just how many gallons he irrigates every day, but he's also going in each section and taking just any spot and taking a measurement. And then that way I can keep the average of how well we're doing with the moisture control, because that's obviously critical for germination. Now that I'm taking control of the things that I can control, it feels better. It would feel a lot better if I saw trees in every hole, but that's actually what I worked on, and let me show you that. Heat of the day is coming up, and one of the things that I need to do that's not always super fun is to inventory seeds and understand what we have, because there's still quite a few tree bowls that need to be planted, and I need to understand what we got so I understand what's working and what isn't. So the sorghum has been like a superpower, and I have a whole bunch of rattle bush to replace everything, which is really exciting because we need it. We have a little bit of blue palo verde, and we have a lot of regular palo verde. Okay, I'm done making my spreadsheet, and now what I'm going to do is sort these into the most likely to succeed, i.e. I've seen a germination of it before, and then I will worry about adding stuff later. I just need to get some shade going. So I'm going to prioritize honey mesquite, 2 types of palo verde, sweet acacia, a couple of pigeon peas just to see if we can get them to grow. Mulberry, rattlebush will do great. The 4-wing saltbush didn't germinate that I've seen, but I still want to send the bag and try it. Sorghum is working great, and I'm going to really bomb each one with sorghum. And then I'm going to try Mexican elderberry. I've never actually planted it before, so we'll see how it does. I almost forgot one, which is not the salsa. But in here is antelope horn milkweed, which I am hoping to use to encourage some butterfly habitat. Milkweed is very vigorous out here if it can get started, so I think with us giving it the right amount of water, it should get going and hopefully get shade to get everything else to come along behind. Your personal data is out there, bought, sold, and shared without your say. That is where Incogni comes in. It's a hands-off service that scrubs your data from brokers and people search sites. You sign up, you give Incogni permission to work on your behalf, and you start gaining your privacy back. After that, your job is to do nothing. You just wait for the updates and your removals to roll in. No forums, no chasing companies, just progress and privacy. The results? Fewer spam calls, less exposure to scams, more control over the data that's floating around out on the interwebs about you. If you care about your digital footprint and you want a way to protect it, check out Incogni and reclaim your privacy today. Right now, you can get 60% off the annual plan when you go to incogni.com/dustups. That is a solid deal for serious peace of mind. When you support my sponsors like Incogni, you are directly supporting the Dustups project. Please give them a serious consideration. And now, back to the episode. I have my planting plan. So that's how many I'm going to make. I'm going to plant 53 seeds per hole. Now that I got my mix, let's go see how many sites I need to plant. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 19, 20, 21, 22, 28, 29, 30. Okay. 30 is what we're going for. Let's go get them soaking. 30, and it's basically starting in B and a part of C. So, I'm going to say 31 spots because I can add a punch on that weird stretch. So 31 spots, mostly in section B. It is time for me to beat the heat. So what I'm going to do is load up my seeds and get going. But I first have to pull up my spreadsheet, which doesn't feel like an outdoor activity when you got to get your spreadsheet ready, but it does help stay organized. Brandon said this isn't going to work, but this moisture meter didn't do anything. So let's try it. Moist. Well, there you go. It works. 4 and 6. Yeah, so it's wet. Or almost wet. It's just the right amount of moisture. Okay, And what I'm gonna do, I carried everything all the way to the end so that it would feel like everything's getting easier as time goes on, because I'm walking far. But also Thane happened to send me some Texas ebony. So we're gonna make sure that these guys get transplanted, but nice and far apart. So 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever. We'll just put this one here. I just wanna make sure they're not together. And I think you guys are gonna like what I do with it. And then that's it. Okay. Now, we'll come to the first one. And this is just going to be a process. The first thing we're gonna do is get this guy in the ground. Hopefully we don't lose too much. And what we're gonna do is one at a time. One. We got some mulch growing on these, that's not good. This should have been taken out of the packaging. I think this is Texas Evan. This is Texas persimmon. Oops. Okay. I want to keep these. I'm just going to have to stay separate. So the milkweed's planted. Next up is winter fat. I want some of these deeper seeds to go first. It's dry enough now that I want the gator over my face just to keep the humidity in. Now all of this is planted. We'll move on to the next one and put it back to stay organized. But then I gotta go get hay. This spot's gonna be trickier because we actually do have a germination and I wanna leave it alone. Oh, there's some honey locust that's not doing good at all. This may have been a mistake for me to replant this because I'm sure some seeds survived, but I wanna make absolutely sure that I get the most out of what I've done because the soil prep is all the work. So, sorghum's done. Oh, I never did the saltbush. Now, let's go get some hay. That means I need the respirator. And I got my gloves. Oh, I gotta go turn off this other camera, which is useless this time of year. It's sad because it's my favorite one, but it just can't be in the sun. It's this powdery stuff that is just gold for moisture retention, so. One thing I'm learning doing this is that mulch isn't necessarily mulch. So what I mean by that is that we have these mulch rows, and the purpose of the mulch row is to grow the microbes and nutrients for the plants and obviously moisture retention. But As I mulch these tree lines, it's not exactly the same purpose. That yes, we are feeding the soil, but for me, it's trying to maximize moisture at the surface level and below, while also providing room for plants to germinate. So the way we mulch in the mulch row is not exactly the same as the way that I do in the tree row. The mulch is a little thinner and we break it up more on the tree row because we also have the problem of the germinations need room to grow and push above that. And what you see here is the line of hay. That's our mulch row that's designed for walking, packing, really pushing the nutrients into the soil without compacting everything, which is not a risk because it's just not wet enough. And then on the left, where you see the irrigation line, that is the tree rows. But as I point the other way, you can kind of see two different lines, and it's not just because of the color. So on the right side, where I've planted the green stuff, that is thinner and more airy. And then this area on the left is designed to be a walkway, and that mulch should be as dense as possible without compacting the underneath soil. You may have noticed through this episode that most of the footage is more than 2 months old. I filmed this right at the end of Brandon's tenure at Dustups. The reason that I've sat on the footage so long is I wanted to share with you a success story. The way I thought this bird nest method was going to work, it's not what actually happened. I planted a very specific number of seeds in a very specific number of holes and had no germinations again. And despite making those holes just large enough for the seeds to have exposure to the sky, the sun is still baking the ground, even in that tiny little area. But there is one particular type of seed I can use to establish a ground cover, and I think that will be enough to get the system going. I've been able to establish cowpeas directly from seed right where I want to grow the trees in these bird nests. And now that these are about 3 weeks old, you can see they're providing just about enough shade to plant tree seeds underneath them. That keeps the worst of the sun off of the tree seeds, but not so much shade and not so much cover that it prevents the trees from growing in the first place. The system I'm looking at now as a next step is that we might plant cowpeas 3 to 4 weeks before we plant any tree seeds, because now we've shown with a lot of mulch surrounding it, we can get cowpeas started, and that's enough ground cover to get other things growing behind it. And if we can get enough soil coverage, then we can come back with pre-soaked tree seeds and plant them in and under and around the beans. I think that'll be enough to shade everything and get it going, but as my experience has proven, it usually leads to another experiment, and over time those experiments get me further and further along. That's all part of the resilience of being out here. You have to be willing to fail your way forward. If you take it personally and you let every setback knock you down, you're never going to find your way through a difficult problem. And this is absolutely a difficult problem. But when I pick my head up and I consider all of the lessons that I've learned, I realize that me and Daniel are continuing to get better and better. I share my weekly progress in the Dustups newsletter, and one of the big pushes right now is taking the opposite approach. This episode was about planting seeds right where we want them to grow. I'm also growing trees in our nursery, making sure we have a guaranteed supply for transplanting. At least to date, transplanting trees has been our most effective approach. If you want to know what's happening in near real time, go to dustupsranch.com or scan the QR code that you see on the screen. Once you enter your email address, you're going to get those weekly updates letting you know the progress that we're making or the approaches that we have determined don't work. Next week here on the channel, we're going to go back to the water theme, but it's about establishing running water at camp. We are in a continuous cycle of supporting the humans so that we can support the plants, and as the plants get more established, we go back into supporting the humans. Dustups isn't intended as an off-grid project, but it's 40 miles down a dirt road from a very small remote town in the first place. Off-gridding is an inevitable part of the story. I'm looking forward to showing you how we now have running water at camp and how we're investing time here and there to make existing out at Dustups not just more pleasant, but more efficient. Ultimately, it's about building a desert forest, and that is what I always want to keep at the center of the story. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.